Thank you so much to our Patreon sponsors, Royal Perp, SNS, Minnesota Wax, and Dr. Dread. Hello everyone, my name is Andrew AJT, and today I'm going to talk about the games I'm most looking forward to in 2022, and what my hopes and expectations for those games are. I was hoping to make an OSRS video this month, but I just had some problems with the ideas that I came up with. Either the idea wouldn't have taken a very long time to make the video of, but I just really wasn't that interested in it, or it would have been a good idea, but I just did not have the time to make the video and do it right. I will make more OSRS videos in the future. I just don't want to either rush one or make one that I just don't think will be a great video. I do have a ton of thoughts on these games that I'm going to talk about in this video. I just apologize that none of them are old school RuneScape. This video I'm very happy to make because I'm actually really looking forward to many of these games. You may want to watch my previous video about the games I've been playing recently. That was last month, and I'll link that in the description, because some of those games are like not prequels, but games in the same series as I'm going to talk about in this video. Or you could watch that video after, it doesn't really matter. I'll put it in the end screen as well. But the first game, which is actually releasing tomorrow as I'm recording this video, is Pokemon Legends Arceus. And I'm actually pretty excited for this game because it looks like really what Pokemon needs. I talked about in the previous video, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, how I really wasn't that impressed with that game. It's a decent remake and it's not a bad game, but it was just very bland and standard and quite boring, to be honest, and there really wasn't that much new content added, and it just felt very stale. Even as someone who really hadn't played a Pokemon game in a while before that, it just did not feel very innovative. So Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I know some people say Arceus, so maybe that's the correct way, but it feels like this game is going to be a lot more refreshing. It's taking the series in a totally new direction. An open world Pokemon game sounds a lot more like what Pokemon is supposed to be, because even though the previous games are still like quite a big adventure, you're still moving around a set path, town to town, and fighting trainer after trainer, and it gets boring, and this just looks so fun to explore and, really be immersed in this whole world of Pokemon. The series is probably overdue for a game like this, so better late than never. I know some people say the graphics don't look very good, and honestly, I've gone back and forth about this. Sometimes I feel like the graphics look good, but then I look closer and they do look kind of like GameCube game graphics, so I don't know. But Pokemon really isn't about the graphics, it's about the gameplay and the experience, so the graphics being mediocre don't really bother me. The next game is Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which actually got a new trailer recently, which is nice because we really didn't know a whole lot about the game before this trailer launched. And it looks like a Mario 3D World type of game, but with Kirby, which is not a bad thing. Kirby definitely is ready for a 3D game, but it doesn't have to be open world. I mean, we don't have to have like Breath of the Dreamland or something where you can explore for miles and miles in any direction. What I mean by the Mario 3D World format is where it's a 3D platformer, but you're still essentially moving from point A to point B, so it's linear. And because most Kirby games are in 2D, I feel like this would be a way better format for Kirby because it would just be a more smooth transition rather than the open world type of format. But then again, we still don't know a lot about the game, so maybe there will be levels where it's more like sandbox, like Mario 64 type levels, and that would certainly be cool as well. So we'll just have to see how the game pans out. I'm sure we'll get some more information on it before too long because it comes out on March 25th, which is a fairly early release date for spring 2022, so that's also very nice to see. It's actually not the first 3D Kirby game. In fact, there's actually several 3D Kirby games, and some of them are quite good as well, but they're more of spin-offs rather than mainline platformer games. For example, Kirby's Air Ride. That's an incredibly fun GameCube game that I used to play a lot back in the day, and it still holds up very well today as a very fun party game, especially the city trial mode. There's also a pretty cheap 3DS eShop game called Kirby's Blowout Blast, and this actually is a 3D platformer with Kirby, but there is no copy abilities, so it's a pretty basic game, but it is actually very fun and somewhat challenging as well if you want to 100% it. And it does show that Kirby can work well in 3D, and it's kind of a nice preview of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Speaking of challenge, though, I do hope that Kirby and the Forgotten Land does have a decent level of difficulty. If not in the main story, then at least in other modes or different challenges that you can do. Because when Kirby games are challenging, it can be quite fun. I played another downloadable Kirby game recently, Kirby Fighters 2, which had a very challenging main story, shockingly. Like, to complete chapters 1 through 5 in this game was actually fairly difficult and required some strategy. So I hope Kirby and the Forgotten Land is also quite challenging at least certain points of the game. And it's honestly one of the games I'm most looking forward to this year. The game is also going to have co-op play with Bandana Waddle Dee, which is really cool, and I hope that you can still play as Bandana Waddle Dee in single player because I love games where there's multiple playable characters. It sounds like the co-op is only going to be local multiplayer and not online. If that's true, it would definitely be a missed opportunity. The next game I'm looking forward to is the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'm very excited for this game, but we don't really know a whole lot about it yet. It is supposed to come out in 2022, although I wouldn't be surprised if the release date gets postponed. In the trailers, it appears that Link will have some new abilities, which is pretty cool, but we don't really know much about the plot of the game or the gameplay or how similar or different it will be compared to the first game. On the surface, it makes it sound like there's still quite a long way to go for this game's development, but at the same time, I feel like with Nintendo, historically, they don't tend to reveal much information about games until they're pretty close to being finished or already finished. I mean, just look with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, we only had the one trailer until like the other day, and now the game is releasing in 2 months from now. So maybe there's a lot more to the game that we just haven't seen yet, or almost certainly. As far as my expectations for the game, I hope they don't just reuse the same Hyrule environment. I hope it's a lot different and that the gameplay is also very different, because they have a lot of potential to just reuse assets from the first game, but I really hope they don't rely on that too heavily. And I don't think they will. I think they will make it a whole new experience and feel very different from the first game, because if you look at other examples of great Nintendo sequels, they are not afraid to innovate and change things up. I mean, just look at the original Mario Galaxy. I thought that game was like such an amazing game at the time, and that how could they ever make a sequel to this game and make it just as good as the original? And they did with Mario Galaxy 2. That game still has some of the same charm as the original, but it also innovates and does new things and was very good. I mean, if you look at the reviews for both games, they're incredibly good. So they didn't just rely on the first game's success to make the second game popular. They weren't afraid to do something new. One final game to mention that I would be very surprised if it released in 2022 is Metroid Prime 4. And this game was actually announced all the way back in 2017, but it had some development problems. It was originally being developed by Bandai Namco Studios, and in 2019 they restarted the development under Retro, who made the previous Metroid Prime games, which is probably a good switch as well, and perhaps there's even some of the original developers. And there's just nothing known about this game because there's not even a trailer for it. There is an image of the title, but that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to this game. I think it has huge potential for a Metroid Prime game on the Switch. I played a lot of Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS back in the day, including the demo, which actually came with my original DS, and also the Metroid Prime 3 for the Wii. I haven't actually played the original 2 games very much, even though I know those are objectively probably the best games in the series, at least for the 3D games. I know there's been a lot of interest in the Metroid series recently because Metroid Dread did very well. It was a very successful game. I didn't buy it. I honestly just am not a huge Metroid fan, especially not of the 2D games. I'm a huge fan of the main 4 Nintendo series, Mario, Zelda, Kirby, and Pokemon, but I never really got into the 2D Metroid games that much, so the next Metroid Prime game I think will be quite fun. I think the 2D games are good, by the way. I just never really found them to be that appealing for me in particular, but I could see why other people love them. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on these games I discussed and any other games that you're looking forward to in the future in the comments below. I'll probably be tweeting about these games as they release, as I do now about other Switch games, so feel free to follow me on there. Thank you all so much for watching. That's all my thoughts for today. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and you can turn bell notifications to all so you get notified of when I upload a new video. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram down below, and you can join my chat channel and clan chat in-game, AndrewAJT62. And if you want to support the channel even further, you can check out my Patreon page in the end screen. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next video.